Redditors, what's the greatest it's a small world moment that you experienced? Born in a small Welsh town and I moved to Canada when I was 7. Ended up working in a steel company and this guy who was in my island the change house for 25 years one day had a dragon sticker on his car. He lived up the hill in the same Welsh town and came to Canada on the same boat, same year, 1965. Ordered delivery food. When we received it the whole order was incorrect, so we went to the restaurant to get it fixed and ran into the people whose food we got, and who got ours. It was my son's then girlfriend and her family. Part of me believes the kids arranged that up. Was at a national park this summer with my wife, more than 2,000 miles from home, and a stranger approached us at one of the viewing points. We started small talking while we were all enjoying the view. "Where you from?" he asked. "Region of certain state," I replied. "Oh yeah, which part?" "Specific county." "Which town?" "Specific town." "Which street?" At this point it was getting a little weird, but long story short, the guy was our neighbor from just a few streets over. Was in a German movie theater and a girl from my high school class was sitting in the seat in front of me. We are both from the US. Was eating dinner in a NYC restaurant and my next door neighbors from 2 states away walked in to have dinner, and neither of us knew the other was traveling to NYC that weekend. Next door neighbors from 2 states away. What? Was in Vegas. $50 blackjack table, and winning consistently. Pit boss comes over, starts conversation. Thinking I'm card counting, so to break my concentration, I stop playing. Fid out he has the same last name as me. Distant cousins. Comps me and wife to a free night and dinner. My wife was talking to a co-worker about each other's cats. The lady she works with mentioned her son was serving as an embassy guard in the Marines and had been given the cat by one of the staff when she was transferred to another post and couldn't take it. He brought the cat back to the States when he was discharged and gave it to her when he moved into an apartment that didn't allow pets. The co-worker mentioned that the woman that gave him the cat was in a specific position at a specific embassy and it turned out to be my sister. My buddy and I were on a ski lift in Vale. CO back when we were 16 years old. Another kid our age hops on with us and we start talking. It started with the usual "Where are you from?" Him. "I'm from Springfield." MO. Me. "My grandma is from Springfield." MO. Him. "Actually, I'm from Willard. It's a small suburb outside of Springfield." Me. "My grandma actually lives in Willard. She works at some local grocery store." Him. "I work at a grocery store in Willard. The name escapes me currently." Me. "That's where she works." Short, red-headed lady. Him. "Glenda Dorner. Made up name. Is your grandma?" Me. "Yay." Him. "I love her. She's so nice." Me. "I wonder if there are 2 Glenda Dorners in Willard then." Haha, I also had a grandma that wasn't very nice. Small world. Went to dinner before a concert in the Midwest city where I'm from, and ran into a famous guy. I discreetly said hi, "I like your work, enjoy my city," etc. Then a month later I had moved back to northern France where I had lived before. I took a weekend trip up to Amsterdam, as it's my favorite city, and ran into the same famous dude. He remembered running into me a month prior in a different city in a different country on a different continent, but didn't find it nearly as crazy as I did. Because he thought you were stalking him. I grew up in AZ and joined the military, got stationed in NC. I had a run-in with the police one night, and the officer who showed up was in my high school class. What are the odds? LOL. I worked at Disney for a summer on the It's a Small World ride. Loaded a childhood acquaintance I hadn't seen in 10 years onto a boat with their whole family. They moved across the country when we were children, and we weren't even Facebook friends. So probably that. I guess it truly is a small world after all. I called off work to go to Vegas for a long weekend. I arrived, checked into the hotel, and went down to gamble for a bit. Was walking into the bathroom when I heard my name. Sure enough, one of the managers was walking out of the bathroom at the same time. We were about 2,000 miles away from home. Luckily, he was cool and never mentioned it to my direct boss. Had me scared the rest of the weekend though. I lived about 2 hours from Vegas at the time, Victorville, and a friend of mine had to pick up his dad who was too drunk to drive, so he headed out. While at a gas station in Vegas about to head home, he ran into 2 friends of ours who happened to be partying. So small world for him. Left a soccer game in Liverpool and walked a few blocks to grab a cab to get downtown. Another couple tried to steal my cab and I got in with them. We were going downtown and got talking. They were from the same small town, about 200 people, that my cousins were from and were at their wedding with my family. Wedding was smaller than 100 people and apparently I danced with his wife at one point. If this was in Liverpool, then there is a strong chance it was all lies to distract you while they stole your wallet. I'm from Chicago and studied abroad in Amsterdam in fall 2016. I went to Dublin for a weekend and hooked up with an Irish dude. Added him on Snapchat afterwards. I come back to America in January and spring break. March 2017 rolls around and my roommates go to Cancun. The Irish dude and my roommates post a Snapchat story at the same time, so their stories are back to back, and I notice they're in the same room lobby area. Turns out the Irish dude was vacationing in Cancun too and was staying at the same hotel my roommates were at. My roommates come back the following weekend and I mentioned to one of them how coincidental it was that they were at the same hotel with a guy I had hooked up with in a foreign country months ago. My roommate says she hooked up with an Irish dude while in Cancun and I show her a picture of the guy I hooked up with in Dublin and lo and behold we hooked up with the same guy, haha. Eskimo sisters. Was on holiday halfway across the world as a teenager. Hook up with this guy. Several years later, one of my classmates mentions traveling to the same remote place across the globe. Apparently hooked up with the same guy. This tourist experience comes highly recommended. On a 3-hour layover in the Amsterdam airport, on my way back home to Atlanta from Rome, I get up to go find some food and pass the escalator. Coming up the escalator is my mother, just landed from Seattle, on her way to her connecting flights to Frankfurt. Neither one of us knew the other would be traveling or where to, and I hadn't talked to her in about a month. Just complete coincidence that we happened to have flights going through the same city at the same time. I hope you just acted really chill, like hi mom, and then just continue down the escalator without looking back. I'm from a town in Norway with 30k people. In 8th grade I moved to South Korea with my family. I went to a friend's home and he wanted to play PlayStation and that was fine. So he asks if he can call someone on PlayStation who were going to also play with us. Let's call him Alex. When he calls and says the guy's name, I am thinking, wait, what? I feel like I know this guy. Turns out I went to elementary school with the guy he had called. So my friend in South Korea was cousins with my other friend from a small town in Norway. What were the chances? Not only that, but Alex went to a holiday in Spain, meets my friend from another small town in Norway that I knew from kindergarten. Somehow my name came up and they started talking about me. I had gotten back to Chicago after a stay in Galway, Ireland. Within 2 weeks of returning, I ran into 2 people who were from Galway during my day-to-day life here in Chicago. The first guy was working as a clerk at a hot dog place near DePaul, and the other guy was wearing a Galway hurler's kit in the grocery store down the street from my house. Took an elderly relative, raised in the US, to a small resort town in Japan. While checking in at the hotel, another elderly woman screamed her name across the lobby. It was her high school friend. They graduated in 1939 but hadn't seen each other since. I follow a few hikers on Instagram. You know, the types that have 20k or more followers that post 2 or 3 photos a day. One of the women I follow will occasionally make references to her boyfriend while on hikes, until one day she included him in one of her photos. Sure as crap, I knew the guy. I had recently taken several college classes with this dude, and we had even worked on a big project together. Funny how that works. One of my GF's friends happened to have art painted on his wall by a girl I had art with in high school. GF lived just under an hour away from me and where I grew up, so it was pretty trippy to see my friend commenting on his Instagram. A month ago I was riding a train in Germany and a family sat down next to me that lived about 10 minutes away from my hometown in Florida, USA. I was on that particular train because I missed my earlier connection and the family had just arrived from flying in out of the airport that I had flown out of 2 months before. I recognized the NFL jacket that one of the guys was wearing as my home team. I remember the mother saying we arrive in Germany and within 15 minutes of being out of the airport we meet somebody from Florida. I started stripping in London as soon as I turned 18 and moved from another city. I sat down to talk to this guy who said straight away what city I was from and I told him yes, how do you know? He told me he saw me months before in H&M and pointed me out to his wife saying look at how beautiful that girl is. Pretty amazing he could recognize me without makeup and months apart. He remembered the exact outfit I was wearing too and how I wore my hair. Stalker alert. Back in 2000, I took a trip to Egypt from the US. During my return trip, I had an 8-hour layover in Zurich, Switzerland, so I ended up going out and seeing the city. I was at this one statue that was a famous landmark. Can't remember the name of it now, and I heard someone call my name. I turned around and saw a former co-worker of mine and her husband. They were in Zurich on vacation. I hadn't seen her since I left that job about 4 or 5 years earlier and now I run into her halfway around the world. My husband grew up in a tiny rural area and we only moved 7 miles away from there to a slightly larger, more suburban area. Every time we go anywhere in town, we run into someone he went to school with. We were visiting my sister last year. She lives in another state, about 1,000 miles away. We were at a restaurant having dinner and I got carded when I ordered a drink. The waitress looked at mine and said, "Wait, you're from city? I grew up there. My family still lives there." Yeah. She was a grade below my husband in school, and he was in the same grade as her sister. I cannot escape my husband running into people he went to school with even when we're 1,000 miles away from where he grew up. My best friend's grandpa was friends with my grandpa when they were both Marines. They went to Marine school 100 miles from where they live now, yet somehow ended up in the same small city where both me and my friend were born. It was adorable to get them together and see them talking about it all. My dad grew up in a different country. He had a stroke earlier this year and was just recently moved into a new room in his rehab facility with a guy that was at his wedding back in his old country. It's not like they really knew each other, as the other guy is quite a bit older and was friends with my dad's dad. Somehow these guys went their separate ways, both ended up in the same city, both had strokes in the same year, and were able to reunite in a really weird way. I went to Disneyland when I was 12. I'm from Canada, so it was quite the trip. On the bus leaving the park I saw this other little girl with a Nintendo DS and I wanted to play. Naturally, being the outgoing kid I was, with no social boundaries, mind you, I asked her to be my friend. She and I talked the entire bus ride. During conversation I mentioned my favorite teacher at the time. Let's call him Mr. Appleseed. She looks at me completely shocked and says, "You mean Jamie Appleseed?" Turns out my teacher was her uncle and she lived an hour from me back home. We're friends to this day. I was at the airport walking to my plane when an old gentleman walking the other way wasn't paying attention as he was texting, walked into me, and spilled my coffee down my shirt. 1 week later I am returning home, land at the same airport, and I am walking while texting, bumped into someone spilling their coffee all over them. Same dude. I have to. Once while on a business trip in Madison, WI in a crowded shopping area, I literally bumped into the pastor from the church I was forced to go to as a child in MA, over 1,000 miles away. Second, I moved from MA to Los Angeles and befriended a guy who happened to live with someone who had bought my computer in MA 2 years prior. About a year ago, I was visiting LA on business and wanted to visit a pizzeria there I had heard about. I went, sat at the bar, and after a few minutes a couple my age was seated next to me. We started talking and they mentioned they had just moved from New York. "Oh, that's where I'm from," I said. "Where did you live in the city?" Turns out they lived not just in my neighborhood but on my exact block, just across the street from where I live. Very cool to travel to the other coast and meet former neighbors. My stepbrother is marrying one of my middle school teachers. I've been out of middle school for 15 years. It's a smallish town, but still, I find it weird. I have always liked her though, which is why I find it great. Make sure that hot for teacher plays at the reception. I live in the Midwest. Went on vacation to Boston, Massachusetts with my husband. Went to the original Cheers to eat. Sat at the bar. Happened to sit next to a girl I graduated high school with. I could not remember her name. This one has me laughing so much. This 100% happened. My mom and stepdad met a couple from Gothenburg. We are from Stockholm in Mexico and became vacation buddies. About a year later they met in Malaysia with no knowledge about each other's travel plans, and about 13 months after their second encounter our whole family was on vacation to Tobago when the same couple called out my mom's name. Meeting a couple 3 times in different countries with zero knowledge about any of each other's travel plans, not even exchanged social media accounts since mom does not have any. This 100% happened. Not suspicious at all. I used to go to an international school in Japan from kindergarten through 7th grade. 3 years after I moved away, I was in China looking to attend another international school. I went to tour one school and saw my 3rd grade teacher just walking around on campus alone. My senior year I went to Beijing for a basketball tournament and my childhood best friend just happened to be in Beijing too. We hadn't seen each other in 11 years. Then off to college to Indiana and met 2 of my friends from Japan whom I hadn't seen for about 8 years. The world is small, my friends. I feel this is very likely to happen when you attend international schools. We all move around a lot, so paths are bound to cross somewhere. I was on a beach in Mexico, well over 1,500 miles from home, and this couple asked if we were using the chairs next to us. Got to talking throughout the day and came to find out they both graduated from the college I did, just a few years before me, and we currently live less than 5 miles from each other. Had to go on vacation to meet my neighbors. 5 miles is pretty far for neighbors. Not very big, but once at a holiday at a beach resort 250 kilometers away from my hometown, there was a couple that I saw every day in the restaurant of the hotel. I didn't say anything to them, but they did give me some sort of impression. A few months later, I saw them in my hometown at a restaurant, sitting in the exact same freaking position as they always did in the hotel's restaurant. My husband and I also sit in a specific way. He's left-handed and I'm right, so we make sure to sit so our elbows don't bump. Every now and then my wife and I buy storage units. We bought one over a year ago that the people managed to find us and wanted to buy everything back, selling a unique item on FB. Overall a very negative transaction, but they got a unit and paid and put all their stuff in it. A few weeks ago a friend calls me wanting to borrow my truck for a unit he got. Yup, same stuff. My neighbor's daughter is my ex's former roommate. We met in Hawaii. I live in Washington, and they were roommates in California. Also, the guy that owned my house before me had a granddaughter, whom sold me the engagement ring that my fiancé just said yes to a few weeks back. Her cousin recently bought from me at my work, and her uncle is an old family friend. Not going to give exact information, but the distances would be me living in Seattle, buying ring in Olympia, selling product to Spokane, and family friend in San Juans. I live in the San Juans, so every day is another small world experience, it seems like. Makes sense since people visit here from all over the globe. This happened recently. I work for a consulting firm in St. Louis. I was in Denver for vacation and decided to go to a Rockies game to check out the stadium and enjoy some baseball and watch some long dongs that Coors Field is famous for, and there were many that night. The couple next to me struck up a conversation with me, and we were talking about what we did for a living. He said he works for some company based in Denver. It's a fairly small company in a very specialized area most people here have never heard of, but I heard of it because a couple people in my office were on a project for that company. He was their project manager. I'm British and was on a cruise ship with my parents. My mum got talking to a Thai waiter whom, 10 years earlier, had temporarily lived 4 streets from us in our hometown. Worked in a adult shop. sex toys, movies, etc. Woman comes in, starts looking at the sex toys. I go talk to her, establish she's looking for just a couple temporary ones and her regular ones. I've got so many are boxed up for a move. She comes to pay, and when I see her card I recognize the last name. I ask her if she's from small town about 4 hours away. She says yes. I say I work with your mom at my day job. She immediately says don't tell her about this. I say same to you. I live in Indiana and have a pen pal that lives in Kuwait. The way we started writing each other was that my mom worked with some of her family. Well, one day we were out shopping and we see a Muslim family. It matches her family's description. One brother, two sisters. I had never seen a photo of her before, but on a whim I walked up and said, "Hi, are you Sarah?" And sure enough it was. Ends up she was in the States visiting family. We met for lunch the next day and had a great time getting to know each other. This was in 2004 and we still keep in contact to this day. Meeting another Irish person at a campfire in Byron Bay, who was not only from the county, but the town I grew up in, and recognized me from a corner shop job he'd had in his housing estate 7 years earlier. LOL. We have the same last name. Haha. Yeah. Hey. Is your family from place? Yes. How did you know? Seriously? That was a wild shot. The name. Clan moved in about a century ago. What's your dad's name? Name. No way. My dad's favorite cousin growing up was name. And that's how I found a cousin once removed on a military base far from where our family was rooted. Live in Manchester. Went down to Cornwall on holiday with family. Bumped into a girl from my class. I was like 13 at the time. Went camping about 2 hours from my college in a fairly unpopular area with a girl I was dating. Saw a guy wearing a full brim hat and a Hawaiian shirt who looked suspiciously like my dad. It was, along with my mom and sister. None of us had ever been there before or even heard of it. It was a spur of the moment trip for both parties. My husband and I are from different towns over 300 miles away. My dad went on a business trip on the other side of the US and met a man on the trip at a convention. A group went to dinner and my dad and this guy were talking about their families and whatever else, and my dad mentioned my husband's name. The other man said, "What is his name?" Turns out my husband's high school girlfriend. Well, my dad met her father on the business trip. They were literally on the other side of the US. Didn't work for the same company, didn't live in the same city, and somehow met and found the common link. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.